Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing today? Thank you so much, and welcome to the next presentation here at the LA Blockchain Summit. I'd like to first thank Draper Goren Holm, our good friends Tim and Adam Draper, Alan, Joseph Shira, Yoni Fermitaro, and many more who really helped organize this incredible event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Spuller, and I'm the the co-chair of the North Carolina Blockchain Initiative, and I co-founded Cryptolana back in 2014. I also served as head of member services for the Chamber of Digital Commerce from 2016 to 2020 here in Washington, D.C. Today, we're going to be having a real important conversation around the topics of regulation, crypto crime, and the future of adoption. And I'm proud to be joined by Patrick O'Kane, who is a special agent with the United States Department of Justice, Drug Enforcement Administration in the New York Cyber Division. So Patrick, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Dan, and really happy to be here. Thanks to Draper Goren Holm for hosting this. I was chatting with you a second ago. This must have been a logistical nightmare to put together, so we really appreciate it. But yeah, I've been in the crypto world for a few years now. I currently work as a special agent for the Drug Enforcement Administration, which is an agency under the Department of Justice. So I focused on regulation and anti-money laundering as it pertains to cryptocurrencies for the past several years, and I recently helped to spearhead the launch of New York's cyber unit. Prior to working for the DOJ, I worked for a few tech and engineering companies, mainly supporting the intelligence community from strategic issues like counterterrorism all the way to tech platform development. And then I also do early stage investing in fintech and fintech adjacent companies and a few other industries, and I'm really happy to be here. Oh, I have a disclaimer. I'm here speaking from my own opinions. I'm not representing the government right now, so anything I say is my opinion and not necessarily representative of the United States government, the DOJ, or DEA.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for getting that out of the way. That's important for our audience members to know. And thank you so much again for joining us. You know, this has been quite a year for the blockchain and the crypto industry, as well as just every industry, to be honest with you, as we've all seen. So we have a lot to cover today. But for starters, can you give our audience and the listeners today just an overview of what the DEA and DOJ does when it comes pertaining to cryptocurrencies and digital assets?
Yeah, so the DEA is responsible, its primary responsibility is to enforce the Controlled Substances Act, so the counter narcotics laws of the United States of America. So where crypto falls into that is with the anti-money laundering laws. So essentially, money laundering is when proceeds from an illicit activity are put through the financial institutions with the intent on hiding or concealing where those proceeds came from. So for the DEA specifically, we look at money laundering as it pertains to drug trafficking. And we usually see that most commonly with the dark web marketplaces like Silk Road or Alpha Bay. But we also see drug sales and proceeds that were not done on the dark web, but that money is then converted into crypto and moved around to try to either facilitate more drug crimes or hide the source of where that money came from. Yeah, and then for the New York Cyber Division, it's a newly established unit that we set up to kind of put together a proactive way to investigate cyber crimes and cryptocurrency money laundering.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think a lot of folks, when they talk to law enforcement officials and regulators, they don't really always focus on the state level, but that has a very, very large impact. I mean, just from the work I've done in North Carolina and what you're doing in New York in the cyber division. Do you deal with a lot with state governments, or do you still focus mostly on the federal level when it comes to your work?
Yeah, we do both. I mean, so as a federal investigator, it really depends on where we want to take our cases. We have the opportunity to take them to a state court or the federal court. And it really depends on the type of investigation we're working. A lot of times we work in task forces that are comprised of members from a lot of state and local agencies like the NYPD, for example. And sometimes we'll take cases on the state side because of that. But most often we try to work with the federal prosecutors.
So over the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of dramatic stories on CoinDesk, on Cointelegraph, and even just the mainstream media regarding these crypto exchanges. $281 million hack of the South Korean exchange KuCoin. We've seen the recent October 1st indictment for BitMEX executives from the United States federal government. What's your take on this?
Yeah, good question. So I don't think anyone's very surprised that the news came out about BitMEX. They've been in the press for quite some time. I'm not in a position to talk specifics. It's an ongoing active investigation for the DOJ, so I can't really talk specifics on it. But in my opinion, if the allegations are true and they're found guilty, I think that companies like that are doing a big disservice to the larger crypto ecosystem. One of the they were charged on the DOJ side with violations of the BSA, and the Bank Secrecy Act was essentially set up to protect people that are using the financial systems, to make sure that it's harder for terrorists and money launderers to move money through the financial systems. And I think the majority of people don't want to have those bad actors involved in the financial systems, whether it be the traditional financial systems or crypto. So yeah, I think if those allegations turn out to be true and they're found guilty, I think they've done a big disservice.
Yeah, and there's a lot of exchanges too that have been playing by the rules, here in the United States and abroad. And I think it just really makes everybody's job a little bit harder when these situations arise.
Yeah, I think the companies that play the long game, that are trying to stay in line with regulation and compliance. Companies like Gemini, for example, they their whole campaign was founded on the regulated exchange. I think companies like that have done leaps and bounds more for crypto adoption than some of these other companies that are just doing jurisdiction arbitrage to try to get as many people on the platform, regardless of where their money is coming from.
It's even after all these years, it still surprises me that there's this misconception among a large swath of the general public and even some regulators that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are still used mainly for nefarious reasons, which, of course, is not the case. But perhaps you can elaborate a bit on some specific trends and statistics you're seeing for our audience in regards to crypto crime. And is it a small percentage of overall transactions?
Yeah, good question. I mean, that is definitely one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, that they're used only for illegal purposes. And I don't think that's true. I think the percentage of illicit transactions in crypto as a whole, like all of the cryptos, including Bitcoin, the best estimates right now are under 2%. And that's pretty small. And if you look at specifically Bitcoin, I think it's a little bit higher. I still think it's below 5%, somewhere between 2 and 5% of all transactions are illicit. And I think that Bitcoin's a little higher because the darknet marketplaces still accept essentially only for a large part Bitcoin and Monero, and it's the most common cryptocurrency there is. It's most people know that it's pretty liquid, so if you give it to somebody else, you can get whatever you need. But that being said, I think the illicit activity kind of mirrors in crypto, kind of mirrors what we see in the fiat world. I think the best estimates are below 5% of fiat transactions are essentially illicit. So with those figures, I think it makes sense, that about 2 to 5% of criminals use money to financial systems. But I think it's also important that governments stay involved in the crypto ecosystem and continue to have tools to get insight and data to enforce the laws in the various jurisdictions to keep that percentage low. I think that's important, for the crypto ecosystem, that law enforcement still has some access to be able to enforce the anti-money laundering laws, counterterrorism finance, things like that.
From your perspective and the role you serve in, how are exchanges based here in the United States operating as it relates to a cooperation with regulatory authorities? Let's just focus for now in the United States. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a spread between different types of companies. The biggest ones that I've interacted with, they've been really good. They've been very cautious. They've had an eye towards regulation. The legal proceedings that I send to them, whether it be subpoenas or search warrants, they return those very quickly. And I've actually had a lot of conversations with some of the biggest exchanges with their compliance teams. And they're asking me how they can better prepare their suspicious activity reports. What kind of data is best for law enforcement? What's going to catch the bad guys that are using these financial systems? So I think overall, most of the bigger exchanges want to be compliant, not just for compliance sake. I think they really care about the integrity of the crypto markets.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good information. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but it's encouraging to see that too. And obviously, we hope that's happening abroad as well.
Yeah. I mean, abroad is a little bit different. There's depending on the exchange, we have to go through a slightly different process to get data from foreign countries. And there are some exchanges that are better than others, but I've reached out directly to foreign exchanges for information, and more often than not, they're willing to help out law enforcement to make sure that nobody, in my opinion, nobody really wants criminals using their platforms. So if a company can make sure that one less criminal is using their system, I think they're going to jump on that.
But one of the common concerns with virtual asset service providers, VASPs, is the fear that the United States potentially may ban cryptocurrency. Why don't you think the United States is going to ban a fiat to crypto on-ramp?
Good question. I mean, look, there's a ton of routes that the government can take, but I think it's important to take the learnings from other countries. We could look at what's happening in Vietnam or China. In 2013 and 2017, China released a few different policies that essentially made it illegal to exchange fiat to crypto. In 2018, Vietnam made it illegal for payments with crypto. And I think the data shows that, those laws didn't make it illegal to have crypto or exchange it, but it really limited the legitimate uses for crypto. So I think the data is, 30% of all crypto transactions were based in Chinese from Chinese wallets. Vietnam has one of the highest exchange transfer rates and volumes in all of Asia. China has something like 70% of all the Bitcoin hash rate. So I think if you look at it like that, these laws didn't really make a difference in crypto adoption. I think that it would be it'd be very hard to enforce that. I just don't see it happening. I think it'd be a heavy lift. And also from law enforcement perspective, with compliant exchanges, we have access to information through subpoenas and search warrants. So if we have enough probable cause to think that a specific address is being used for illegal purposes, we can send subpoenas to those companies. And if the fiat on-ramps and off-ramps are shut down, we lose that insight. So I think more harm than good would come from a ban like that.
It can lead to unintended consequences.
I think so. I think we would just lose insight to a lot of great, a tool for law enforcement, essentially. And I think if there's fewer legitimate reasons to use crypto, the percentage of illegitimate transactions would increase on the blockchain, and we just wouldn't have insight to what's happening, or at least the attribution to who's making these illicit transactions.
That's good insight. And moving into the future of adoption, I'm seeing a lot of exciting projects on the horizon. A lot of these projects are being developed by members of our audience today. So some terrific projects. Some of these have been around for several years, but I think a lot of them are starting now to get real traction here in 2020, and especially going into next year. One that comes to mind is IOTA. Earlier this summer, I hosted a webinar with Matt Yarger, who's the head of Smart Cities and Reg Affairs with the IOTA Foundation. Great project, and they've been around for a while. I guess my question to you is, what types of trends in companies are you seeing? And more specifically, what companies would you say you're interested in personally?
Right, yeah. I guess what I'm interested in and what I look at from an investment perspective can fall into a few categories. I look at, you mentioned IOTA, I look at kind of crypto adjacent companies, so non-crypto companies, but that can leverage crypto as a payment system. So with IOTA, one of the things that they're working on is energy and mobility. And I see a lot of white space there for companies that provide electric vehicle charging, for example, to be able to leverage the IOTA platform, and consumers would have complete control over the energy that they buy and be able to sell back what they don't use. So it gives a lot of control to consumers. I like things like that. Mm-hmm. In terms of more crypto-centric companies, I look at infrastructure companies that are providing kind of the traditional finance tools, but on the crypto side of the house and in a regulated way, companies that are providing margin or derivatives or loan, different financing opportunities. I think those companies are really interesting. And then on the enterprise side, I still think there's going to be a lot of movement there. Companies that are using blockchain to facilitate interbank transfers and settlements, loan settlements. I think that will grow in the future. I think there's a lot of hurdles between the existing financial infrastructure and the blockchain, and they don't quite talk together just yet. I think that'll come. And then I'm also looking at analytics companies, not just analytics companies that provide blockchain forensics for governments, and that's super important, and it will be continue to be important. But companies that provide analytics that for all of the blockchains that can provide predictive analytics and help investors make more intelligent decisions, and companies that are trying to find ways to monetize all of this new data and broader economic data that we have because of the various cryptocurrencies. And I think with the momentum that we've seen with regulation, and more banks are going to want to get into crypto, more consumers are going to want exposure to crypto. So I think we're going to see a lot of M&A activity coming up with between banks and a lot of these great crypto firms.
Yeah, and that really segues into the whole conversation about how the United States really needs to remain competitive in this industry and this greater digital economy. That includes keeping and bringing in talent to our own shores. Something a lot of us are very passionate about. And this is extremely important now, with China being extremely proactive with their efforts surrounding the development of BSN, Chinese economic zones. I think law enforcement, and I'm sure you would agree, could really be an ally in this talent retention and recruitment. And I think continued regulatory clarity is also a big help. Guidance, it's a great step, and we've seen that with the recent letter from the OCC. Acting Comptroller Brooks was on earlier today. They're doing some terrific work out of that agency. What can the United States do to draw talent from around the world, and what can we do to stay competitive? And I guess a second part of that question is, are central bank digital currencies part of that answer?
Ooh, those are big questions. Yeah, I think I do think we're losing a lot of intellectual capital to places that have I don't know. I don't want to. I think regulation is very important, but countries that have more clear regulation and better incentives to bring people into their country to develop products in the crypto and blockchain space. Like you said, China's using, really embracing this technology, and I think it's to get an economic advantage. I think with the proliferation of Alipay and WeChat Pay, it's been very successful, and they want to make sure that their crypto and blockchain technology is the most robust in the world. And I think I think we need to be cognizant of that in the U.S. I think China, like you mentioned, their economic zones. China, as an example, in June, I think it was, they put out a proposal to create a new free trade port in the Hainan province, and part of that plan is to encourage financial innovation, technology, and set a blockchain center there. So I think if if the U.S. had really great financial incentives to bring the best and brightest companies and talent to make sure that companies in the blockchain and crypto space get built in the U.S., I think that's really important. And for the central bank digital currency, I think that's the way. I think that's going to be in our future. I think the technology is there, and it's just a matter of all of the stakeholders getting on board. And I think that's the biggest thing. So it needs to be developed in concert with all the stakeholders. So the banks, the companies, and the regulators, and everyone needs to make sure that they're on the same page. And development is really key in my mind. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and in my opinion, a central bank digital currency or even like a stable coin that's backed by a basket of different assets, like Libra, for example. What's important is that it has that it kind of mirrors and embraces the tenets of the United States, which is free and open. So I think having a privacy-centric coin is important, but not secrecy. I think as long as there's privacy, but a way for governments with a proper probable cause to get the access that they need, I think that's how it should be developed. So I think a lot of thought needs to go into it, and all of the stakeholders involved need to really be on the same page.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, and I think it's likely going to take a public-private partnership with the government, I think, to really get this done. It's funny you mentioned Libra. Last summer, we all remember the hearings on Capitol Hill regarding the Libra project, and this has gone through several changes and revisions over the past year. My question is, in light of the Libra rollout and the changes that have been made, how has Facebook's Libra project and the newly rebranded Novi wallet affected or changed the discussion around cyber and blockchain within the eyes of law enforcement?
It hasn't really changed the perspective. I think everyone's watching it closely and making sure that if and when it gets rolled out, that law enforcement and all the regulators and government agencies understand it. I think that Facebook and the Libra project members are taking the feedback seriously from Congress and really stepping up the regulation side and clarifying how KYC is going to be done and what they're going to do to make sure that Libra falls in line with the current, the BSA and the money laundering laws and KYC. So I think that's a good improvement. The rebranding of the Novi wallet to kind of provide a little more clarity is good. I think, I actually really like the Libra project personally because, we talked a little bit about China and how quickly Alipay and WeChat Pay is developing and being spread across the world. I see it here in New York. I can pay at some stores with Alipay. What I like about Facebook running the Libra project is actually how quickly they can get that out there and be adopted by billions of people. I think that's really important. And I think a technology that can get out to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, and has all of the parts of our free and open society, I think that's really important. I think that's the way I would like to see things go.
Yeah, the size and scale of Facebook really can't be understated or overstated at this point regarding that. Exactly. Now, outside of the DEA, and we got a couple minutes left. I really wanted to get this in just so people could get to know you better as well. You mentioned you're also interested in other projects, potentially some early investments in companies. What else? What do you think? What are you looking at right now in the blockchain crypto world, from your opinion?
Yeah, like I said before, those crypto adjacent companies. I'm focusing a lot on a couple aspects. There's a couple trends that I'm following. So electric vehicles, I think, are really going to take off, and there's going to be a need to have a coherent payment system. I think batteries are going to be able to transact energy back and forth. I think that's really great. Like I said, data analytics companies are big. I think they've been companies that provide these solutions for governments to have insight into blockchains have been crucial. You talked about public-private partnership. We've partnered with some of the best blockchain forensics companies to be able to have access into these blockchains and understand the movement of funds and be able to run coherent investigations and catch money launderers, drug dealers, terrorists. That's really important. And really infrastructure plays I look at. So anyone that's building something that can really provide a use for people to get traditional financial products in the crypto space. And I think I'm really excited about that because I think we're going to see a lot of mergers. So I think there's going to be a lot of exits coming up here, and that's a good thing. I think there's a lot of great momentum in the crypto ecosystem right now, and I'm really excited to be a part of it, to be frank.
There's going to be a lot of momentum, and I think it's going to continue to happen at a very, very fast pace. So we got under a minute. How best for people to get a hold of you? You really got a really interesting story. I mean, they may want to connect with you afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. The best venue is LinkedIn. Really, I think that's on the event page. So you just click on that and
Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And thank you, Patrick. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And we look forward to really collaborating with you in this new and exciting technological frontier. And thanks to the organizers. And we appreciate you tuning in today. And we look forward to the rest of this fantastic event. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dan.